Hey, what's going on guys? Ace Trainer John here. Today we're going to be going over the This Week at Bungie for January 28th, 2021. But before we jump into it, I asked that if you want to keep up to date on all Destiny 2 news, information, leaks, tutorials, discussions, and more, that you go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Otherwise, let's jump into it. This week at Bungie, we introduced seasonal challenges. Welcome to the second to last Twab of Season of the Hun. Many of you have been navigating the secrets of the Harbinger mission, uncovering randomly rolled Hawk Moons, and earning the Radiant Scepter exotic ship. Content-wise, we're coming to a close for the season, and we're incredibly excited for what's to come in just a few short weeks. We've already been covering some upcoming quality of life changes to Destiny 2, like the return of Umbral Engrams, but it's almost time to take a peek at fresh content. And as I predicted a while back, the season of the Redacted, aka Chosen, trailer is going live on February 2nd, 2021. And when that goes live, I'll try to have a video out right away breaking that down. Before we get there, we have a new feature to cover, seasonal challenges, and a round of weapon-focused sandbox changes to walk through. As a warning, this is a pretty large amount of information in a small space. We've joked about meaty twabs before, but this is one may feel a bit overwhelming if you rush through it. Let's take it slow, step by step, and get through it together in one piece. Introducing seasonal challenges. Now, if you're not aware, a while ago in a TWAB, I think this is like, I want to say during Season of the Worthy or something, or during early Season of Arrivals, they confirmed that they were going to be getting rid of the weekly bounties because people were pretty frustrated and fed up with bounties. I mean, I'm personally pretty tired out on bounties. And also, the bounties themselves do cause a lot of FOMO. That being said, they stated in Season 13 that they're going to replace this with a brand new system, and that is this brand new system. So before we actually jump into how it works, let's go over their goals for this. They wanted to provide a guide to new, returning, and veteran players for what to do today/this week, guide the player through the seasonal content week over week, encourage players to engage with complexities and nuances of the seasonal activity and rituals, and reduce the penalties on XP and Bright Dust for missing a given week. And so, in order to solve these goals, they are introducing a new pursuit type for players, seasonal challenges. The seasonal challenges live on their own page and are accessed through the quest log or season pass and are separated by week. And here they provide a picture, which I'll put on screen for a couple of seconds. Something of note, you can see the season pass artwork that's usually in the background of the season pass. You actually have it up there behind the challenges, so I'm not entirely sure what's going on in this artwork, but if this rings any bells, let me know in the comments down below. Anyways, moving on, let's go ahead and break down how this works. Basically, every week for the first 10 weeks of a season, between 3 and 10 new challenges appear automatically for players. Some of the challenges deal with the seasonal content, although others push players to complete strikes, Gambit, and the Crucible, or to focus on non-activity focused Destiny rituals like gaining power, unlocking seasonal artifact mods, or improving guns and armor. These challenges can only be completed once per account, but once they become available, these challenges can be completed at any time before the end of the season, and do not need to be started or picked up from a vendor. As an example, if a player doesn't play for weeks 2 through 4, they can return on week 5 and have all those challenges waiting for them, which is good to hear. That was one of my problems with the weekly bounty system. Completing each challenge awards XP, contributing to your season pass ranks. Other rewards could be Bright Dust, seasonal currency, or other interesting items. Kinda curious to know what those other interesting items are. And moving away from weekly bounties, which were restricted to broad objectives tied to ritual activities, they have taken more leeway with creating some interesting or more difficult challenges. These may be things you are already doing, or things that test your ability. Some examples include defeating the primeval envoys in Gambit. It's not too bad. Defeating enemies in Nightfall, the ordeal with seasonal weapons. I hope the seasonal weapons are good, because then I won't be mad at this challenge. Gaining infamy or valor ranks. That's not too bad. Acquiring the ritual weapon and its cosmetic ornaments. This isn't too bad, but I reckon this will maybe be a challenge for some casual players, depending on the weapon and objectives. Winning rounds in Trials of Osiris. Oh my, bro, I get there's a Trials refresh, but please, for the love of God, don't make me play Trials. Anyways, and lastly, completing a Grandmaster Nightfall. Depending on the Nightfalls, this could be a pretty difficult one for most people. Not all the challenges will require that level of accomplishment, but the harder or longer the challenge is, the more experience it rewards. Challenges that focus on the seasonal activity and ritual mostly need the season pass to complete, but most of the ritual focused challenges can be completed without the season pass. Overall, roughly 60% of the seasonal challenges do not require the season pass. I do find it a bit interesting that they're playing a bit more into the free-to-play side here. Anyways, with the changes above, they are removing weekly bounties from the 3 ritual vendors, Zavala, Shax, and Drifter, which was expected and we already knew. Banshee 44 as well, and a seasonal vendor. Not really sure why those 2, but okay. These vendors will still have daily bounties, which reward XP, and the 3 ritual vendors will still have repeatable bounties for those of you who want to pursue additional XP and Bright Dust. Lastly, most of the challenges disappear after the season they were introduced, and anything that isn't claimed will be lost. We don't add any new challenges after week 10, which should give everyone a few weeks to clean up any challenges they didn't finish. Any challenge that rewards unique or seasonal items, currencies, lore books, seasonal weapons, etc. can be completed as long as the seasonal activity is still in the game, but XP awarded for completing the challenge will only be available during the season it was introduced. So yeah, that's fairly standard for account-wide challenges, at least for Battle Royale games. I know Destiny 2 isn't a Battle Royale game, but it does have a season pass, and that's pretty standard for most. Next up, let's talk about Bright Dust. Ooh, this could get spicy. Back before Beyond Light launch, we discussed some of the goals around the changes to Bright Dust. As a refresher, we wanted to change the way you earn Bright Dust and move more towards account-specific paths to give players with only one character significantly more Bright Dust than they've been earning over the last year. In Season 13, we'll be continuing to move towards these goals by adding Bright Dust onto seasonal challenges. Since you no longer have to purchase weekly ritual bounties, each of the Strike, Crucible, and Gambit seasonal challenges will award between 75 and 300 Bright Dust. We are also introducing an end-of-season Bright Dust bonus. If you complete nearly all the seasonal challenges, we are awarding a single 4,000 Bright Dust pile. Additionally, each ritual vendor challenge, complete 8 bounties, awards 120 Bright Dust for each character who completes it each week. And because this is prompted by the removal of weekly bounties, the only seasonal challenges that will be awarding Bright Dust are the ones that both season pass owners and free players can complete. Here's a quick breakdown of how much Bright Dust you should expect to earn over the course of Season 13. So starting off with seasonal challenge Bright Dust, which is for all players. The free seasonal activities will award you 6,000 Bright Dust, and the seasonal extra bonus for completing all the challenges will give you 4,000, so you get a total of 10,000 Bright Dust from the seasonal challenges. And then with the season pass Bright Dust, the free path will net you 7,500 Bright Dust, and the paid path will net you an extra 3,000 Bright Dust, with a total of 10,500 Bright Dust. So if you actually grind out all the seasonal challenges for the season, as well as complete the season pass, you'll get a total of 20,500 Bright Dust, which is a lot, and is a lot more easier to get compared to what we were getting before. Then, on top of that, if you complete the weekly ritual vendor challenge, which is the 8 bounties per activity, if you do that on all characters for every week for the season, you'll get an additional 14,040 Bright Dust on top of that 20,500, which is a lot of Bright Dust. Now, it may be slightly less than what we were getting overall in previous seasons and years, but overall I see this as a net positive because this is a lot easier to do than grinding out the weekly bounty for every character for every activity every week. I found that really mundane, boring, so this is a very, very good change. Additionally, they still plan to offer weekly and repeatable Bright Dust bounties for seasonal events, giving you a bit more Bright Dust towards desired rewards, which again, another good thing. On a final note here, they go on to note that to make sure to claim all your seasonal challenges that award Bright Dust prior to the end of a season, because once the season ends, associated challenges and their Bright Dust rewards will expire and no longer can be claimed. So make sure as soon as you complete these challenges, you claim them right away. Anyways, moving on, let's go ahead and talk about the Sandbox, because it's going to be changing up next season. Before we actually jump into the changes, they preface this with saying every season they have a collection of changes to Destiny 2 Sandbox, spice things up a bit. This season, they're making some targeted changes to weapon archetypes that need some love, as well as beginning some preparations for crossplay. So if you see some weird changes in this, it's because of crossplay, Which, hey, that could mean that crossplay is coming sooner than we think. So, starting off, the following weapon archetypes will have their mouse and keyboard recoil adjusted closer to controller. Currently, it's a 40% reduction recoil, and it's going to be halved to 20%. As for the following weapon types, auto rifles, scout rifles, pulse rifles, SMGs, hand cannons, and LMGs. Before we actually move on to the rest of this, I just like to preface this right now. I'm not a fan of this change whatsoever. I think they should have made the controller recoil better instead of making the mouse and keyboard recoil worse. Because as someone who played on Xbox up till Shadowkeep, that's including Destiny 1, I was not a fan of console recoil. They do go on to state in the case of pulse rifle, SMG, and LMGs, they're also giving them some buffs. Starting off with SMGs, they are largely outclassed by auto rifles at medium range, and by sidearms at short range, with player feedback often mentioning how hard they are to control. To address this feedback, they're introducing the following change. They're reducing camera movement from firing an SMG by 24%, which is good because I know certain SMGs like the Cold Front are firing all over the place on controller. And then pulse rifles with the mouse and keyboard changes were kicking a little too much, so they reduced the camera movement from firing a pulse rifle by 7%. And then with LMGs, aka machine guns, with the mouse and keyboard changes, they were also kicking a little too much, so they reduced camera movement from firing a machine gun by 9.5%. They do go on to state that they will pay close attention to how these changes play out when they go live, and they plan to revisit individual archetypes in the future update as needed. Outside of recoil adjustments, they will also be tuning a few weapon archetypes in Season 13. Looking through back-end data and community feedback, they landed on the following. First up in the buff section is rocket launchers. Rocket launchers have fallen behind other heavy weapons in most measures of effectiveness. They're pushing them more into burst damage role. So they increased the rocket launcher damage by 30%. Exotic rocket launchers have been adjusted individually and are affected by this change to different degrees. Paired with the buffs to reserves from last season, they're hoping that you'll explode many more things in Season 13. Next up on the buff chopping block, we got fusion rifles. Fusion rifle usage is very low, and they feel like an unreliable choice in Crucible compared to shotguns. So because of that, they increase fusion rifle damage fall off start distance based on the range stat, so it's 6% with 0 range, 16% with 100 range. And they also reduce camera movement from firing a fusion rifle by 9.5%. Now before you freak out about them not really doing anything to buff it in PvE, I just like to say, fusion rifles are good in PvE. Their main problem is they just don't have any good perks at all. Honestly, if more fusion rifles were built like Loaded Question, fusion rifles would be pretty like S tier in PvE. Finally, on the buffing chopping block, breach grenade launcher usage is very low outside of Mountaintop, and I believe this is part of the reason is that the loop of hold the trigger to arm, then release to detonate is challenging to execute, particularly since projectiles can bounce off targets if the trigger is held. So because of that, breach grenade launcher projectiles will now detonate on impact with a character even if holding the trigger, which is a very good change. And that concludes the buff section, so let's go ahead and move on to the nerfs. First nerf is to sniper rifles. It's a pretty minor one, but they're increasing ADS flinch to snipers when taking damage from other players. They do note that even though sniper rifle usage has gone down in the Crucible, I will say as someone who has played quite a bit of Destiny PvP over the past couple years, snipers are extremely frustrating to play against because of their flinch. So I hope in a trials-like setting, I actually have a chance against someone who's just sitting there hard scoping, but we'll have to wait and see. And then next up on the nerfing block is swords. They're reducing sword damage by 15%. I'm going to be a little bit honest here, this might be too big of a damage nerf. I mean, one of the main things is swords is like you have to get really close, and you don't really have that opportunity a lot in Destiny, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. Next up, we got some exotic changes and bug fixes. Some exotic weapons lose their buffs when you switch weapons, which is intended. They would also lose their buffs when pulling out your ghost shell, which is not intended. Fixing that issue on these weapons, Ace of Spades, Terabon, Hawkmoon. That's good. Then, Borealis and Hardlight now have a custom and quite short animation for switching damage type. That's good. Next up is what seems a duality buff and nerf. They increase damage fall off distance by 1.25 meters. but they reduced maximum buff stacks from 7 to 5, but each stack now grants more of a damage bonus, and they extended the duration slightly. So overall, this is a net positive for duality. Next up on the chopping block is Sturm. Sturm will once again reload any equipped special slot weapon on kill, provided the special weapon's clip isn't full already and there's available reserve ammo. And lastly, they fixed an issue that was preventing Merciless from increasing his charge rate on non-lethal hits, which was a very persistent bug that keeps popping up. And they do note that they are planning to take a quick tuning pass to Arbalest, but it won't be ready in time for February 9th, but they are expecting to touch this later in Season 13, which is good to hear because Arbalest has crazy aim assist. Also, at the end here, they do go on to mention that there will be some new perks coming for next season. Next in the Twab is regarding Crimson Days. While each year we look to February as a time to celebrate bonds of friendship throughout the community, Guardians have come to know the celebration as Crimson Days. It was one of our first seasonal events in Destiny 1, a tradition that they carried to Seasonal 2. While there is great enjoyment of Crimson Days, we feel that it's been missing the mark in terms of quality over the last few years. As such, we have made the decision to discontinue Crimson Days moving forward. While we'll miss the event, this move will allow us to maintain focus for alternate seasonal offerings, ranging from quests to activities and more. We have quite a bit planned for Season of the Redacted, and our hope is that we've maintained or even improved the quality you've come to expect from the upcoming release. In terms of the game mode that is associated with Crimson Days, that being Crimson Doubles, currently this game mode is being shifted into the Destiny Content Vault, but it may return in the future. And they go on to say absolutely nothing about the cosmetics associated with Crimson Days, so I don't know if they'll end up putting that into the Eververse Engram pool for future seasons, or if they're just straight up not allowing these cosmetics to be earned. We'll have to wait and see on that one. Overall, my thoughts on this change is good riddance. Like, I'm not really a fan of this event. I never really liked the rewards. Maybe there's a couple Eververse items I liked, but other than that, didn't really like the rewards, didn't really like the activity. So I'm glad that they're moving away from this event and shifting their resources towards something else. Anyways, moving on into Twab, we got a report from the player support team. First up is Crucible tokens are getting deprecated into junk starting Season 13, so make sure you spend those. And also, the current Stasis Fragment quests will be deprecated, so if you want to complete those, make sure you complete them. And as always, there's a list of known issues, but since this video is getting a little long, I'm not going to go over them. And as always, there's the movies and the artists out of the week. If you'd like to see any of this stuff, the Twab will be linked in the description down below. On one final note before we close out this video, the Destiny the Game Twitter tweeted out the other day that if this tweet gets 7 likes, we'll add a new LZ on Europa next season. And I cannot tell if this is just a meme or not, so hey, there's a chance next season we'll get a new LZ in Europa. Anyways, this was John, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.